Theo and I are back with bold predictions for Week 16 fantasy football, the playoffs. Woo, it's time to go win. And some takes for 2025. Theo, off we go.
Matt, I'm so excited for this one today. We've got some very, very cool ones, but we saw Drew Allar is heading back to Penn State. And I think what this does is sort of shrinks up the 2025 quarterback class. Allar was trending up into the top 10 picks, maybe the top 15 picks, sort of had that juice to be the QB3 overall. Now, to me, it's really looking like a 2 QB class where maybe another QB sneaks in, but certainly not inside the top 10 overall. And there's also going to be multiple teams needing a quarterback with fewer quarterbacks to choose from. Sam Darnold will end up being a red-hot free agent commodity because of the lack of quarterback prospects in the 2025 class. But it's going to start at the top of the NFL draft. You've got the Las Vegas Raiders will draft Shedeur Sanders with the number 1 pick, whether he likes it or not, whether Deion Sanders wants to be with another team or not. It's not the worst landing spot for Sanders to be able to throw passes to Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, and whoever else they add in. They also drafted a few younger offensive linemen that could pan out. But Sanders goes number 1 overall. The New York Giants probably reach slightly to get Cam Ward, but that would not be the worst outcome for Malik Neighbors. Ward has a big cannon of an arm. So then you come down to it. New England will pass on a quarterback. Jacksonville will pass on a quarterback. Carolina begrudgingly will pass on a quarterback. So you've got Tennessee at number 6 and Cleveland at number 7. Both of those teams, instead of reaching for the QB3, will battle it out for Sam Darnold in the offseason. And Matt, Sam Darnold will sign with the Cleveland Browns. That's your starting quarterback next year in Cleveland, Sam Darnold. Those are the big 3, and Tennessee will have to figure it out.
Good news for Jerry Jeudy. Won't have a rookie quarterback. We'll have a veteran who we know can deliver the football on time. Sometimes. So
occasionally.
That's good for Jerry Jeudy. If you have Jerry Jeudy in Dynasty, that's good news. Hopefully that happens. I can see it. I very much can see it. Now, we need to celebrate right now. It happened. It finally happened. A few weeks too late, but it finally happened. The Penix has arrived.
Oh, yeah!
I'm aroused. I'm very, very aroused and ready to inject the Penix into my fantasy lineups everywhere I have him. Get him in there. Don't wait. Don't see what happens. It's a home game against the Giants. It doesn't much matter who the opposing defense is. You just want him playing at home for his first week as a starter. Let's just all collectively remember who this is, why we love the Penix so much. 2 straight seasons in college with 4,600 plus yards, and the yards per attempt just kept climbing, like 7.5, 8.5, 9.2. The interceptions each year, again, this is with these extra games in the college football playoffs, kept those interceptions under 10 while the touchdowns were over 30. He is going to be a great professional passer of footballs. He has underrated athleticism because he didn't test at the combine, but we know from his high school testing that he is athletic, that like CJ Stroud, he's going to run more in the NFL than he did in college. He didn't have to run in college. He had a Dunze. He had Jalen McMillan. He had Polk. He got Polk drafted in the 2nd round. So this is very exciting. Auto start for Penix this week. Soak it in, enjoy it, inject it into your veins.
Yeah, I love it. And we talked about this in the pre-show, Matt, how it's a really good opportunity for him this week against this Giants defense to come out red hot. I'm going to go a little bit low.
And the stack this week is not necessarily Penix to London. It is Penix to Pitts. You want to go with the Atlanta PP stack because who was the most prolific receiver at Washington tethered to Michael Penix? It was Rome Odunze in the X receiver position. And Kyle Pitts likes to play a lot of X with London in the slot. I love Penix to Pitts. That's the stack. I think that's going to win some money in DFS this week.
Yeah, and another player who might be able to win you some money in DFS this week and might be able to go right in your lineup in the fantasy football playoffs is Brenton Strange. This past week, Brenton Strange had the most targets of any single tight end with 12. And Matt, he caught 11 of them, 73 receiving yards. doing sort of his best Evan Ingram impersonation. And this is a player where we looked at him earlier in the year in weeks 2 and weeks 3 when Evan Ingram got injured in it's been such a horrible year for Jacksonville. Evan Ingram was actually injured in warmups heading into week 2. And Strange stepped in with 6 targets that game, 5 targets in following week in week 3. But this is a player where he was drafted in the second round. This was a player drafted in the second round. He's 250 pounds. He's 6'4". This is a guy that has some juice as a prospect, and now we're starting to see it. I think Brenton Strange is going to come on for the rest of the fantasy football playoffs. I think he has another top 6, top 7 performance this week. I think we see him catch 8 passes. I think we find the end zone this week in a winnable game for Jacksonville against this Las Vegas Raiders team that might just be playing for Shootout Sanders at this point, Matt.
Now, we gave you the case for Jerry Jeudy in 2025. Sam Darnold would be an upgrade for him and better than a rookie quarterback. Josh Downs is another one. Josh Downs could get a quarterback upgrade, and that is essentially anyone other than Anthony Richardson. Now, this week on paper, it looks like a win. Home game against the Titans, not so fast. My bold prediction is Anthony Richardson loses this game, that he's on tilt. Every week he seems to throw more ducks, trying to get his receivers hurt, and that the locker room and the coaches finally say enough is enough after he lost this game. Maybe they make a switch back just at the end of the season just because the locker room has mutinied against him. But odds are he finishes out the season with a whimper, and then the Colts are forced to bring in some competition, an upgrade, and that quarterback, whoever that is, ends up beating out Anthony Richardson in camp, and that will be the upgrade we want for Josh Downs in 2025. So some 3D chess with Anthony Richardson face planning again this week.
Yeah, it was difficult to watch Anthony Richardson this past week. We recently recorded a Sonic Truth podcast with Jax Falcone. The two, you guys were both definitely on Team Penix over Team Richardson. I tried to fight like hell and make a case for Richardson. Jax called me out right after Sunday. I've capitulated. You and Jax were correct on that one. I would much, much, much rather have Michael Penix heading into 2025 than Anthony Richardson. That was some pretty bad on a couple of those picks, Matt.
Well, you know why? You know why? Anthony Richardson chose to come out too early. He wasn't productive in college, and he refused to get the seasoning he needs. And his timing was very bad. NIL money comes rushing in the next year. It would have made financial sense. It would have made career sense, logical sense for him to stay at Florida. He didn't. He opted to come to the NFL and chase it, and it hasn't worked out. Penix goes back, chases a championship, loses to Michigan in the national championship game, does everything he needs to do. Now he's ready and willing to get in there and win and blow out the Giants in his first start.
Yeah, we talked about this as well. I mean, when you look at Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, and now Michael Penix, you're getting these hyper experienced quarterbacks coming into the NFL. I mean, not just experience. I mean, Matt, the bar used to be like 30 games. Used to love when you saw a quarterback with like 30 college starts. Now you're going to start seeing a number of guys who are getting closer to 40, especially with the transfer portal. Very interesting times for quarterback evaluation. But Matt, we're stepping into the holiday season. You got Christmas, you got Hanukkah, you got New Year's, all in like the same week this year. So it's got me thinking a little bit of Christmas Carol. We're going to go first off, the ghost of Christmas past. This is going to be a week that you want to start Aaron Rodgers in all formats. Aaron Rodgers and Matt Stafford are going to have a good old-fashioned shootout game. This is sort of going to be a fun few weeks for Aaron Rodgers. We saw it with the Miami game where he passed for 339 yards, only one touchdown that game, but it was sort of a glimpse of things to come. Last week against Jacksonville, Rodgers was absolutely slinging. The first touchdown pass to Garrett Wilson, the long one to Devontae Adams. He ends up with 289 passing yards, 3 passing scores. This week goes up against the LA Rams. The Rams and the Jets are going to have a shootout in MetLife Stadium. 35-30 LA Rams. These teams go back and forth. Devontae Adams finishes as a wide receiver 1. Garrett Wilson finishes as a wide receiver 1. And Puka Nacua finishes as a top 3 scorer at the wide receiver position. The Rams are going to win the game, but Aaron Rodgers is going to pass for 4 touchdown passes this week, Matt.
Yeah, and it's helped by the fact that the Jets defense, particularly the secondary, is demoralized, right?
Yeah.
So they've been decimated, they've been demoralized, injuries, and just the fact that this was supposed to be a competitive team. It's now a lost season, and they're laying down. And Aaron Rodgers is in the best possible situation when he's facing a team that can put up points against his defense and exploit the Jets' now weakness, which is their secondary. So this is how you get the alignment for a shootout where your opponent can exploit your defense's weaknesses and you can exploit your opponent's weaknesses. And there we have Aaron Rodgers throwing for 400 yards. Devontae Adams, another wide receiver 1 week. When we look back at the proper team constructions for 2024 fantasy football, robust RB is exceeding all expectations. However, there are some hero RB builds that just might be the nuts, especially if you're able to get a super stud running back who's just exploiting teams in the NFL playoffs and the fantasy playoffs. Who would that be? Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs, round 4 pick. He is going to pass Aaron Jones and finish number 2 all time for the Green Bay Packers single season touchdown scoring. He's going to score 3 touchdowns at home against the Saints this week. Write it down. And he and Jahmyr Gibbs are going to be the best possible hero running backs to have, not Saquon Barkley. Because all the money is going to be won this week and next week, and Gibbs and Jacobs will outscore Barkley. And looking back, it will actually be robust wide receiver builds that win the day. Think about it. If you have Chase, Devontae Adams, Nico Collins, Josh Jacobs, that's the nuts. Unless you have the super nuts, which would be Chase, Jahmyr Gibbs, Nico Collins, Terry McLaurin. Do better than that.
No, I think you're right. And we talked about this as well before, where a lot of people like to talk about league winners. League winners are not league winners till they actually win the league, Matt. And you win the league in the fantasy playoffs. So, Matt, you might be absolutely correct. When we look back at who won the big ones on Underdog, who won the big ones in the FFPC main event, it might not necessarily be that team that started running back. We have 2 more weeks to go, and win rates are going to be shifted considerably. And a lot of those Barkley Henry teams, they're out. Those guys did not perform well in week 1 of the playoffs. So listen to what Matt's talking about with these builds. Always a fun one when we look back and we say what could have been. And
you know what you shouldn't have done. We know that. We know what you shouldn't have done. Robust RB was good, maybe not supreme as was projected a few weeks back. Oh, robust RB is going to win all the money. Not so fast. Also, if you happen to pay up for tight end, Laporta, Kelsey, Andrews, you had to draft them instead of Josh Jacobs, Terry McLaurin, Nico Collins. That was the worst possible opportunity cost that you could have paid. The highest cost was that, and it's going to be almost impossible for those that went premium tight end this year to compete.
Matt, I'm going to go back to the Charles Dickens little reference. We're going to go with the Ghost of Christmas Present. And Matt, you talked about really, really solid values at ADP. How about you could have drafted Lamar Jackson at the 5-6 turn in almost every single draft, and the earliest you had to go for him was early 5th round. I'm sure there's plenty of drafters out there who would like to trade their Tank Dell exposure, their Christian Kirk exposure, their Calvin Ridley and Mark Andrews exposure to some Lamar Jackson exposure. And to make it even crazier, people were selecting in 6-point passing touchdown leagues like the NFFC. Patrick Mahomes was going well before Lamar Jackson, like 10 picks before him. So that was another cheat code. So my Ghost of Christmas Present, The only team that Lamar Jackson has continually struggled against in his NFL career has been the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin has a 5-2 record against Lamar Jackson as head coach in Pittsburgh. So Lamar Jackson has a big-time losing record, and this year he struggled mightily against Pittsburgh. That game was the ugliest one of the season for Lamar Jackson. His last interception came in Week 11 against Pittsburgh. And Matt, before that, he had gone 4 straight games without a pick. Now he's gone 3 straight games without a pick, going straight up against that Pittsburgh defense. That was also the only game where he failed to have more than a 50% completion percentage in any game this year. An absolute nightmare performance, and only 46 rushing yards. Usually those games where Lamar Jackson's not delivering as a passer, we see some gaudy rushing statistics. This was absolutely nothing. It was his worst game of the season by far. You're going to see some redemption. The ghost of Christmas present is Lamar Jackson fantasy managers are going to get a smash game against the only team that has been his real fantasy nemesis. His Achilles heel has been the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Baltimore Ravens at home in Baltimore are going to beat Pittsburgh by 10 or more points. Lamar Jackson finishes as a top 3 scorer at the quarterback position, despite a difficult matchup against Pittsburgh. Lamar Jackson shines for the second straight week. I know it's Josh Allen's all but locked up the MVP, but Lamar Jackson is going to be the number 2 in the MVP voting, and he's going to give those voters something to think about this week against Pittsburgh.
So let me get this straight. Your bold prediction for this week, your bold prediction is that Lamar Jackson plays well and finishes number 2 in the MVP race, which is currently where he sits.
Well, the MVP race was not part of the bold prediction. It was just a little icing on the cake, Matt. You know, just the ghost of Christmas present. Lamar Jackson, a smash game against Pittsburgh has been few and far between. I'll make it even bolder. For the first time in his career, 3 touchdown passes against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's never had that. Never gone past 2 in that game. He has 3 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. 4 touchdowns for Lamar Jackson this week.
It's getting bolder. It's getting good. Congratulations. It's getting bolder.
Let us know in the chat. Is that bold enough? Is it bold enough?
Well, I was worried the ghost of Christmas present was sounding like a coward.
No.
Bold prediction show. But I think if you're going to go, I think you go 5 touchdowns, you lock in the bold prediction.
Okay, we're going to go a fifth touchdown. Lamar Jackson, you're going to think they're winding it out. He's going to go fake handoff. He's going to go option read, and he's going to rip it for a 60-yarder in the fourth quarter. And he's going to throw a throat/gesture at Mike Tomlin and tell him, not in my house.
There it is.
There it is.
We just hot takerized what was a very solid, very reasonable position, and we made it so hot and so bold. I'm proud of you, man.
Huge.
So this week, we are going to see Rico Dowdle do it again. The doubters are, they doubt Dowdle, but you shouldn't doubt Dowdle. Went 150 yards again last week. Situation is perfect yet again. The highest total game on the slate. Dowdle's going to go for over 150 yards again. And he will make himself invaluable to the Dallas Cowboys. They are going to be maximum conviction heading into the NFL draft that they're fading running back. Now, we think, right, that even as 0 RB drafters, there's no way that Dallas couldn't decide to finally just relent and pay up for a running back in the NFL draft. But we are not in the room. And I believe there's more conviction in this 0 RB in Dallas than there is anywhere in fantasy football. They stick with it, but they do draft a running back in the second, third round, but they do not. Though we've predicted it on this show, the success of Rico Dowdle ensures that he's back leading a committee in Dallas in 2025, joined by Nick Singleton on day 2 of the NFL draft.
That actually would be a very effective backfield. We like Nick Singleton at Player Profiler, and I think they would mesh well with one another. I love it, Matt. And I think that oftentimes one thing that we've talked about is we're usually pretty good about predicting where guys are going to get drafted in terms of ranges. We're not necessarily good at predicting which team will do it. So there's going to be some running backs who are really, really good in this 2025 class. They're going to end up in committee backfields. Dowdle has definitely earned himself a job next year of some sort, and I think he'll be in the NFL longer than a lot of people anticipated. It was sort of a let's draft him because he's going to get touches in this backfield. He's actually been delivering over the second half of the season. Big hat tip to Rico Dowdle. And Matt, you've been on the Dowdle train for years now, so Podfather should get some respect for this one. You were on Dowdle 2 seasons ago as Pollard's backup when some people thought he wouldn't even make the team. For me, we're going to continue it up. We're going to wrap it up. You had the Ghost of Christmas Past with Aaron Rodgers, the Ghost of Christmas Present with Lamar Jackson, and the Ghost of Christmas Future. So, Matt, Ja'Marr Chase is your number 1 pick in the 2025 draft. Chalk. Your number 2 pick is probably going to be Saquon Barkley. Chalk. Not so fast, my friend. The next 2 weeks, you're going to hear more and more statements about how Jahmyr Gibbs should be the number 1 pick in 2025 drafts. David Montgomery just suffered what everyone besides David Montgomery is calling it a season-ending MCL tear. Montgomery's holding out hope for like an appearance in the Super Bowl, not going to get surgery till after the playoffs, but he's done for the year. Jahmyr Gibbs this week, you had Dan Campbell come out and say he's gotten better and better all season, and now he's our lead horse. He's got to be ready to roll. Every single game without David Montgomery in Jahmyr Gibbs' career, he's never had fewer than 99 rushing yards, and he's had a touchdown in each and every one of those games. Over the next 2 weeks, if you have Jahmyr Gibbs in your lineup, you're probably going to win your league. He's going to average 31 points per game over his next 2 weeks. He's going to finish as the RB1 overall in both weeks. This is going to be an epic run for Jahmyr Gibbs. And Matt, once you see, you know how these things work. Recency bias, what have you done for me in the fantasy playoffs, has a big impact on next season's ADP. And also, once you see what a player's ceiling looks like, usage-wise, it's hard to take that out of your brain. And when you see a peak usage game from Jahmyr Gibbs, where back-to-back games of him getting 25-ish touches, it's going to be hard for you to forget that. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the consensus 103 after these next 2 games, and he will be the dark horse 101 in 2025.
Okay. I liked everything you said. Very bold, brash, informative. Right up until that final position. Just say he's the 101 in 2025. That's what he is.
Ja'Marr Chase is my 101.
31 the next 2 weeks. He's going to be the 101 because he will have outscored Bijan Robinson. And we know that fantasy gamers hate to draft running backs that are past the age apex unless their name is Christian McCaffrey. And last time I checked, Saquon Barkley is not Christian McCaffrey, though he's probably more talented than Christian McCaffrey. I said it. He was just doomed on the Giants, and now he's finally not on the Giants. And the 1 year he's not on the Giants, he is doing what everyone wanted Christian McCaffrey to do. But for that reason, the ageism of fantasy gamers, he will be the 101. I'll just fix that take for you right now. I'll boldify it. How about that? And I love Gibbs this week. Stacking the Lions makes sense, but I also like stacking the Bears. I just like game stacking. That particular game is all set up to be the shootout of the week. There are no games on the slate right now with a 49 or higher game total. This is the one that looks to smash. Caleb Williams has struggled this year, but when you look at his throws, number 1 in deep ball attempts, number 1 in total air yards, top 10 in money throws. He's been very unlucky. He's had a difficult time dialing it in specifically to Rome Odunze deep, Rome Odunze in the end zone. Rome Odunze has huge explosive week potential given his air yards, given his red zone usage. It just needs to click. One of these weeks, it's going to click. And my bold prediction is it is this week that the DFS stack you want is Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze running it back with Jahmyr Gibbs. That's going to be the most lucrative. And we talked about the wide receiver 1 next year being Ja'Marr Chase. I agree with you. the wide receiver 2, also on the Lions, it's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.